Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mainframe Studios and Sunset Sessions. This is a new program for us. It's a happy hour every third Thursday of the month. We focus on a little arts programming to let people know all the great things that are happening in our city and being able to have a conversation about it. Our first Fridays have been such a success. It's been great to add another program to have a more intimate dialogue about the arts in our community. We're just so grateful for all the people that have shown up and the people that are here making the city awesome, including Pat Bodie. So, as most of you know Pat, and everybody that knows Pat is a huge fan. So I'm just so grateful that you've decided to pick up the baton and carry the torch for the artist of Des Moines and really have dialogue about it, which I'm so grateful for. And I know there's such a need in Des Moines to grow our city. We need to have dialogue and this rich dialogue to tell people all the stuff that's happening here and get to know the artists behind the work.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to Pat and Jordan Weber, another fan club. I'm number one. I'm up there. I hope I'm number one. My Frances might be number two, my daughter. So we're going to have a live recording of this podcast. So if everybody can kind of just keep that in mind. During this conversation, it'll be about 20 minutes. I also want to just do a plug for our next First Friday. Jay Vigon and Margot Nahas is here. They had a store out in Studio City. You might know them as the artists who did the album covers, all the artwork from Prince Purple Rain and Van Halen's 1984. That's their artwork. Well, they had a store in Studio City when they lived out in LA, and they will be recreating that on April 5th here. So please join us. It's free and open to the public, very family friendly, from 5 to 8 on that Friday. Tangerine Food Company is our resident caterer. They have drinks and great food plates here tonight. They also will have dinner options for our First Friday too. So thank you again for coming. I'm going to welcome Jordan Weber up here to take my place and enjoy.
Siobhan Spain, everybody, Executive Director of Mainframe. And as Jordan's coming to his seat, just a few things. You can find us on Instagram at 900Views Podcast, same for Facebook, and there's a connection here for live.900views.com, and Jordan's Instagram account at Jordan_J_Weber with 1B is on Instagram, and if you are savvy, get your phones out and go there, because he'll probably be talking about some of the art that you will see there, and that's where you'll be able to keep up with him over time. So this is coming to you live from the not-for-profit Mainframe Studios at 900 Keogh Way in downtown Des Moines. This is 900 Views, a podcast about building community through the arts as we build an arts community. And yes, I'm your host, Pat Bodie. And although we already have 4 episodes posted, including one with Abby Sawyer, who's here. She's episode number 4, Abby and the Sawyers. Don't miss that one. This marks our launch party for the podcast. And for those of you just now tuning in, this is part of the Sundown Sessions, the every third Thursday events from 5 to 7 here at Mainframe Studios, where you get art, connection, and cocktails. And at 6:23, I will be having one. Okay. So thanks for joining us, and I really want to thank Mainframe's Executive Director, Siobhan Spain, and our tech guru, Alex Cooney. Please give them a round of applause. And you always have to do a shout out for Justin Mandelbaum, the founder of Mainframe Studios, along with the board and the donors. And I also want to thank all of you for making it here tonight. And those of you who are listening, you found an alternative to the NCAA for a bit. Good for you. Yeah. Now, I'm honored to visit with Des Moines-based multidisciplinary artist Jordan Weber tonight. He's one of Iowa's most recognized artists. He's earned a Blade of Grass Fellowship, United States Artist Nomination twice, Iowa Arts Council Fellowship, and an African American Leadership Forum grant, just to name a few. And one of his most recent pieces is For Malcolm X Greenhouse, a community gardening, gathering, and meditative space constructed on the foundation of Malcolm X's birthplace in North Omaha. And just earlier this month, or late last month, I should say, he was invited to keynote a Brooklyn, New York conference titled Inspired by Malcolm X, Healing and Self-Determination Through the 4MX Greenhouse. I don't know about you, but I've never done anything that inspired a conference. Can we give Jordan a round of applause for that?
Thank you.
So as a speaker, community partner, and workshop leader, Jordan Weber has touched on topics such as race and art, street art, and Eastern philosophies. In addition to his studio practice, he often works with youth, frequently looking at empowerment. And in fact, he has shared with me his most recent artist statement, which is not a statement, but 3 or more provocative questions posed. And the first one we're going to kick off with today, because I promised I would turn some of these back on him. So his question was, how do we live independently of a system that is unsustainable for our societal whole and live toward communal empowerment? So Jordan, what is meant by communal empowerment, and what is the artist's role in living toward communal empowerment?
This is the most intense podcast I think there's ever spotlights on. So we're going to break the whole thing down. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pressing the button, check time. Yeah.
So we talked about going to Instagram so you guys can kind of visually see what we're talking about, because it's hard for me to speak about communal empowerment quite a bit if you're not looking at my work. It's just almost impossible. So it should be, I hate to be doing this, but I am. The third line down, you can see the greenhouse. So
Casey and Andrew help people if they need help getting to Instagram.
I don't know if anybody's even looking at it. So I have a background in Des Moines, and I'll keep it pretty brief, but my father drove for Jesse Jackson growing up, and it was kind of this situation where I was developing. My father, obviously half black, used to teach quite a bit about black empowerment in the community, self-resilience as, the other within Des Moines. So communal empowerment's kind of been this foundation of my entire practice and my upbringing as well. My mom used to run the Evelyn Davis Center. So the idea of foundation and communal empowerment in general is key to everything I'm doing right now. The Malcolm X Greenhouse is that in a nutshell. It's everything I've been working for, the past 10, 15 years, rolled into one program. And I think, I'm not going to throw statistics out, but North Omaha, I'm going to. Here I go.
Okay, go ahead, that's fine.
North Omaha is second or third in the entire U.S. in lead-contaminated soil, especially North Omaha. So you think of people growing food in a food desert on, soil that is laced with contaminants, mercury, lead, whatever it is. We're trying to build these projects to counter that. So a greenhouse that sits above the soil, but the greenhouse also has links and ties to the EPA in Omaha. So we'll give people tools to mitigate soil in their region, therefore, producing healthy food if they choose to grow fruit and vegetables on their property. So that's communal empowerment within my work. I know that was a long answer, but
no, but that's not art on the walls, right?
It's not art. No,
so
not anymore.
How have you structured your studio practice and these workshops and put them together in a way that really delivers community in a large sense without sacrificing the concept of it being art?
That's kind of tough because a lot of the youth workshops are art-based in general, but how do you marry that into communal empowerment long-term? So a lot of my youth workshops are, 2 or 3 weeks long, sometimes shorter. And I can do these temporary art installations and art workshops with them to teach them about, social engagement through the arts. But when I leave, there's no funding, there's no long-term sustainable project that we can work on to really continue that, speaking on empowerment through the arts. So you try to bleed it into empowerment as the individual so they can get something more than just art out of the workshops, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, so since you can't do it as a program, you're really trying to make sure that when you walk away, the individuals you worked with got something to take home in their soul.
Yeah, and it's essentially giving them tools, some sort of tool to take home. I was just talking to Justin Mandelbaum about the practice of meditation. So another whole aspect of that greenhouse is monthly meditation sessions through the Omaha Zen Center. So people can go once a month and get tools to actually take home to hopefully help them with traumatic experiences on a daily basis. I've used that through some of the toughest times in my life. So teaching and giving the kids tools through art here, I think, like meditation, is just one little thing that can continue beyond that 3 or 4 week program.
So how would you describe the role of the artist? Mm-hmm. I spilled a word there that I shouldn't have. Okay. How would you describe the role of the artist in this kind of community building and community empowerment? Mm-hmm. What is actually your role?
Did you mean do you don't like the term activism?
I just didn't want to feed it to you. I hadn't meant to feed it to you.
Oh, okay. No, feed me all you want. I was stuck on that. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So what is the role of the artist in this kind of community building?
I think for me personally, I can't speak, for other artists, but me personally, there was a time period where I was making 2D works, a lot of commercial work that you'll still see around, and I don't feel like it was doing anything after, having the background of community engagement and empowerment. I didn't feel after a while that the work was of significance in that light. So my personal role as an artist is trying to bring that upbringing into, my work. And I think that's the only reason I feel like I can speak on it personally, because it's part of the mission of the work to do that. So I don't think there's an answer for what the role of the artist is. I think it depends on what the artist wants to do. And for me personally, I want to engage the community, talk about environmentalism, set up long-term tools, but artists in general, the role is kind of a tough question.
Well, you mentioned funding being a challenge, but what other obstacles are you running into as you try and do this kind of work, particularly here in Des Moines, where we're trying to build community through the arts as we build an arts community?
A lot of is partnering with the right people also. So Rick Lowe, I don't know if you guys know of the Row House Project in Houston, Texas. So Rick Lowe, I've looked up to him for 10 years, and he invented the row houses, the Row House Project in Houston. And it's a humongous grant he got in Houston to buy, I think it started with 8 houses, I think it's 16 now. It's a whole entire block to turn houses into studio spaces and gallery spaces for single mothers. So it just keeps kind of evolving in general. And he, was able to do that, I think, in the early 90s. I shouldn't be quoting that date. But that's kind of something that the artist thrives on in my situation, is like getting these grants, hopefully larger grants, to do things like the 4MX project. That's a huge obstacle in a city like Des Moines. We're getting there with our Arts Council has funded numerous projects of mine. They've been a huge support. But these giant, grants that other cities like Minneapolis, I think they're number 1 in the nation for grant money distribution. We don't have that here for me to do these large, sustainable projects. So I think it's kind of just time in Des Moines. It's a timing situation, because I think we are eventually going to get to the point where you can fund really large projects and be successful in Des Moines. Part of my whole entire thing with my practice is I had to travel outside of Des Moines quite a bit, Des Moines has been the foundation of which I've built my entire, career. So I'm able to kind of come back to Des Moines to do some large projects that will be launching this summer. So we're getting there. So I kind of have to bounce back and forth. That's been a challenge of traveling quite a bit versus getting big enough grants here, to do more.
Is it because we're just too small a community so far, or is there something else going on?
I mean, you got a good audience here. They could probably tell you better than I could. I don't know what's going on. I think we're a small city and we're 10 years behind in the art scene, which I shouldn't be saying, but it's true.
What would you like to see us do to play catch up? Besides, I know big grants.
Give me money.
But you are one of the more successful artists in terms of being able to actually make a living and doing a full-time art. Kind of what's your secret there? It is while still being based in Des Moines.
I think, for one, I feel like I was in a basement for 7 years painting and trying to hone a craft in that people would want to buy. So that commercial background, I said that I'm getting away from, that sustained my practice for quite a while. But now it's getting to the point where I can kind of branch out, go to different cities and get more funding. So you kind of have to play that game of, you're hustling all the time. So you're trying to balance things out, but you're trying to sell work, enough work to pay the mortgage on your house. I have a 2-year-old now. So you know how you pay for a human being. Yeah. And then on top of that, getting big enough grants to make bigger moves, like as an artist, to do bigger things, to get bigger shows. So it's just a stepping stone. It's consistent building to get to the next level. And at that same time, I feel like I've been honing my practice. And my practice is the same as construction at this point, which I worked after college for 4 years. So getting to that point where I can make a good amount doing what I'm doing right now, but then doing these side things also, But I mean, I don't have to hustle as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a good spot right now,
What's the role of imagination in your work?
Pan's Labyrinth as a kid. That's all I gotta say. That movie kind of set and piqued my interest in doing art in general. Besides my mom went to Drake for art. So I don't know. It's something that I think you're born with, imagination in general. I don't know where else to go with that.
It's not something you have to work on. It just comes to you.
I've never had a problem coming up with an idea. It's a problem of telling my wife too many ideas and she's like, I don't know about that one, And it's me spewing ideas constantly. So now, before I was at a point where I would generate some revenue from a big painting, and then I'd have this idea to do a sculpture or a community piece, and I would go out and I'd buy all this stuff, and then the idea wasn't that great. So now I'm sitting there with, in my studio right now at the street, if you open the garage door, there's at least 15 rims, 24-inch rims in there. There's a taxidermied wolf. Cut up cop cars from previous shows, So I feel like I'm hitting the mark more with imagination, where I can kind of filter out, what's a little bit too much.
Well, before we close, take that imagination and paint a picture for us, if you will, about kind of the ideal community of by and for the arts. What could or should we look like? One with social and environmental justice as its foundation.
Oh, man, that's tough.
Sure.
Every other city, we have the Des Moines Arts Center, and it's amazing. I grew up going to that space, but we don't have anything like Omaha has the Union for Contemporary Art. Minneapolis has too many things to think about, but they have juxtaposed youth organization where it's arts. It's built, that and the Union for Contemporary Art. It's a museum on the main floor. The bottom floor is youth programming. The top floor is a residency program. We need a residency program here to bring in more artists and support artists as well. And I think Drake's doing that, actually. I don't know. So it's numerous things, I think, to have a healthy environment within the arts in general, but we really need we need 5 more galleries. We need galleries with an international recognition. We don't have anything like that. We don't have a Kavi Gupta or anything in Des Moines. So I could go on and on, really. Smaller contemporary museum, cheaper studio spaces. Mainframe's one of them. I don't know if that fills up the majority of the talent in Des Moines. What else? More youth programs. We need the juxtaposed thing. We have a lot in town, but I think that if we combine them to do art programming in a space like the Union for Contemporary Art that has a museum above it, it would elevate the city quite a bit. More public art. We don't have enough of that. More public art in inner cities. We have none of that. That's normally somebody doing a free mural. That's public art in the inner city. So I could keep going. I don't know what our time.
Well, just tell me this: what counsel, advice, mentorship would you provide to someone kind of coming up, sort of the way you did, and their interest and passion is the arts?
The biggest thing I think for me was like getting a job, first and foremost, that you can do work and think about art. And that's dangerous because I was doing construction thinking about art all the time, but you need something that's not going to take you away from like the real passion. If you feel like you really want to grind it out, because it's a grind until you get to the point where, it's 5 years of grinding it out to get to the point of where I wanted to be, where I was where I'm at now. But that day job of consistent income to buy art materials, that's the biggest thing. Just stay focused if you think that that's really what you want to do. I'm saying this like I have it all figured out. Like it's a big success story, but I don't, because I'm still doing these things. But if it's what you really want to do and you're really spending time in the studio consistently, and you're really willing to go outside of Des Moines to travel, to have FaceTime and meet people, and think outside the box and do bigger projects, like I think if you stick with it, it's something that you can do in Des Moines. Des Moines supported me for the past 11 years experimenting, street art. That was illegal, but street art was huge because there's nothing going on in Des Moines besides the graffiti work. I was one of the first ones to get that going personally in the city, and then just building from there in a city like Des Moines, like cheap studio space, large studios as well. So just keep at it and spend time in the studio and don't settle for doing 2D work.
So one of the things, too, then we obviously need is to get more funding so we can finish out floors 2 and 3 here at Mainframe Studios, right? Yeah. Oh, good. So, Jordan, thanks a million. It's been great to get to visit with you, and I hope we get to do a longer form piece at some time, but, the cocktails do await, and it's important that we get to those as well, so thanks to Tangerine for those. Now, be sure to join us on next Saturday, March 30th, in this space for Cocktails and Cabaret, a fundraiser for Iowa State Theater Company. The podcast won't be here, but I think it'll be a great event. You can find out details at iowastagetheater.org, and the artistic director of Iowa Stage Theater, Matt McIver, will be our next guest on this 900 Views podcast. And again, I want to thank Jordan Weber, tech director Alex Cooney, and All Things Mainframe. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Thank you.